I always thought the worst thing a woman could do was lie about where she'd been. But when I found out my wife was sleeping with a man who works at the White House, yeah, that White House, I realized there's something even worse than betrayal. It's when the lies come wrapped in flags, in suits, in patriotism. When the person who tears your life apart is someone who shakes the president's hand in public and unzips your wife's dress in private. This is Confession Reddit, where we tell the true stories behind betrayal, infidelity, and the dark truths hiding inside picture-perfect marriages. If you're here to uncover the side of love people are too afraid to talk about, you're in the right place. Now, let me take you back to the night that shattered everything I thought I knew about loyalty, marriage, and my country. Her name is Julia. We've been married for 6 years. I met her on the 4th of July, which is ironic in the cruelest way possible. I was sitting on the hood of my car, parked at the edge of the National Mall, watching fireworks light up the DC sky. She showed up, barefoot, tipsy, and smiling like she'd swallowed every spark in the sky. She asked if I had a lighter. I didn't, but I offered her my jacket. She said I looked like a man who'd lost something. I said I had. She didn't ask what. She just sat beside me. 1 year later, we were married. Julia had always been political. She loved everything about Washington. The marble, the monuments, the way everyone always seemed to be part of something bigger. I'm just a high school history teacher. I love this country too, just in quieter ways. I teach about wars and presidents. She wanted to be around them. So when she got a job as a consultant on a federal policy task force, I supported her. It paid less, demanded more, but it made her happy. Or so I thought. The first time I noticed something was off was during a dinner party. One of her coworkers from the task force was there, Ethan, a polished, charming man in his early 40s. Too smooth. He talked like he was used to convincing people. Maybe that's why he worked in communications at the White House. I remember him placing his hand on the small of Julia's back a second too long. She laughed in a way I hadn't heard before, this soft, breathy sound that didn't belong to the woman I knew. I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband. But something about the way they looked at each other gnawed at me for weeks. Then came the late nights, meetings that ran over, phone calls she'd take outside, a new phone passcode. She said I was being paranoid, that I didn't understand how intense her job had become, that I should be proud of her. So I tried. I brought flowers to her office. She wasn't there. I cooked her favorite meals. She picked at them. I kissed her neck like I used to. She flinched. One night, I picked up her coat from the back of a chair, and a folded paper slipped out. It was an official White House visitor's pass. It had been signed by Ethan. On the back, in Julia's handwriting, it said, "You owe me dinner." Just dinner. Winky face. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to be sure. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. Her name was Carla. Ex-FBI, cold eyes, and a voice like sandpaper. She didn't blink when I told her what I suspected. She said affairs inside the Beltway were more common than people thought. She told me she'd need a week. 2 days later, she called me and said, "You should sit down." There were photos. Dozens of them. Julia and Ethan leaving a hotel in Georgetown. Julia kissing him in the back of a black SUV. Julia in a red coat I bought her, laughing on his arm as they walked past Secret Service outside an official event. I couldn't breathe. But it got worse. Carla showed me series of encrypted messages Julia had sent from a private device. Messages that suggested this wasn't just a fling. She wasn't just with Ethan. She was working with him. On something secret. Something off books. Something she hadn't told even her own task force about. It was no longer just adultery. It was conspiracy. And that, Long Wow, is where the story begins.
I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the kitchen, staring at the manila folder Carla had left me. The photos, the transcripts, the timestamps. It was like flipping through the pages of someone else's life. Someone who looked like my wife, but wasn't. I replayed everything. The late-night phone calls, the perfume I didn't recognize, the way she started wearing heels again. I had blamed work stress, burnout, even hormones. But never once did I consider that the woman I married might be capable of lying to me every single day. She came home around 10 p.m. that night, said there had been a security delay at the Capitol. I asked her if she wanted tea. She nodded, dropped her bag by the door, and went upstairs to shower. I stared at the bag. My hand hovered over the zipper for a full minute. I didn't open it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I already knew what I'd find. When she came down, wet hair and a towel, wearing one of my old shirts, she looked like the Julia I had fallen in love with. She curled up on the couch and put her feet in my lap like nothing had changed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why. Why she'd do this to me, to us. But instead, I asked her how her day was. She told me about a briefing on federal education policy, how chaotic the transition team was, and how she hated the new coffee machine at work. She lied so effortlessly, so naturally. I started to wonder if she had ever told me the truth at all. The next day, I followed her. Carla offered to do it for me, said it was safer that way, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. I called in sick, sat in my car across from her office, and waited. At 11:47 a.m., she walked out, alone, wearing sunglasses. She didn't go to lunch. She walked 4 blocks to a beige building with no signs, swiped a key card, and disappeared inside. I waited an hour, then 2, then she came out, with him, Ethan. His suit was immaculate as always. They didn't touch, not in public, but their bodies moved like magnets, perfectly synced. He handed her something, a flash drive. She slipped it into her purse like it was a breath mint. Then they went their separate ways. I wanted to believe it was nothing, a work handoff, a briefing. But that night, she said she'd be home late again. Late vote meeting, she said. She kissed my cheek, told me not to wait up. So I didn't. Instead, I drove to the hotel in Carla's photos, room 1703. I didn't have a key, obviously, but I waited in the hallway. An hour passed. Then I heard them, laughing, inside. And then I did something I'm still not proud of. I pressed my ear to the door. I wanted to hear something, anything that could explain why the woman I loved was on the other side of that wall with a man who wasn't me. What I heard wasn't moaning, or seduction, or whispers of regret. It was a conversation. Low voices, serious tones. She doesn't suspect anything. He's still buying the teaching stress story. Good. We'll need at least 2 more weeks before we can move the files. And after that? He paused, then said, then we make it disappear, just like the last one. The last one? I stepped back, pulse in my ears, my mind spinning. This wasn't about an affair anymore. It was something else, something bigger. I didn't know what files they were moving. I didn't know who she was supposed to be, but I knew one thing. My wife was involved in something dark, dangerous, and I was just a pawn in whatever game they were playing. I drove home without remembering how. I sat in my driveway for half an hour before going inside. I wanted to pack a bag, leave, burn everything, but I didn't. I poured a glass of bourbon and stared at the wedding photo on the wall. She looked radiant in it, and I looked like the happiest fool on earth. The next morning, I called Carla. I need you to dig deeper, I told her. Forget the cheating. I want to know everything. Who she's working with, what they're doing, and if I'm in danger. Carla was silent for a moment, then said, you should have come to me sooner. I didn't respond, because deep down I already knew that adultery was just the surface. Beneath it, something was rotting.
Carla didn't waste time. By noon the next day, she had traced Ethan's known contacts, digital fingerprints, and a disturbing trail of encrypted communications routed through foreign proxy servers. These weren't just casual political emails or secretive love letters. These were structured drops, timed file exchanges, burner accounts, and something Carla described as clandestine-grade coordination. She had seen it before, in cases involving intelligence leaks, blackmail, and internal espionage. And now she was seeing it tied to my wife. You're not dealing with an affair anymore, Carla said. You're dealing with people who erase evidence. If you poke too hard, you might not get a warning before things turn ugly. I asked her if she thought Julia knew what she was doing. She sighed. Nobody gets this deep by accident. For a moment, I wanted to defend Julia. I wanted to say she was being manipulated, blackmailed, tricked into something. But the more I thought about her smile when she spoke to Ethan, the calmness in her lies, the careful scripts she used with me at home, it all felt deliberate. Worse than deliberate. Comfortable. Carla handed me a flash drive with redacted reports. Read this at home, and don't connect it to Wi-Fi while you do. Some of the files were recovered from a cloud server that had clearance tags attached, which means if someone realizes they were accessed, it won't be me they come after. At this point, I should have gone to the police, or to someone. But who do you go to when the people involved have credentials to walk inside the White House without a badge? I didn't even know who I could trust. So I did what every scared, heartbroken man with a laptop and a bourbon bottle does. I opened the files and hoped they wouldn't kill me for it. The documents were technical. Internal memos, operation outlines, lists of names, and assets. One memo was marked for internal executive clearance only. It referenced a long-term operation named Glass Bell, a psychological influence program aimed at manipulating youth voting trends, behavioral patterns, and belief systems through media disguised as neutral content. Julia's name appeared in the lower half of a directive, not as a passive observer, not even as a participant, as a coordinator. That word broke me. I wasn't married to a woman who cheated. I was married to someone orchestrating something that could break minds, influence democracy, use children. That night she came home humming. She kissed me on the head, told me she was tired. She heated up some soup and asked if I wanted to watch an old movie like we used to, Casablanca, her favorite. I sat beside her. She leaned into me. I tried to match her calm, tried to remember what her body used to feel like when it meant something. But all I could hear was Ethan's voice in that hotel room, just like the last one. And now with everything I knew, I started to wonder what happened to the last person who got in their way. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Julia got up early, said she had to be at a breakfast briefing. I told her I'd drive her. She looked surprised, hesitated, then smiled. Sure, that would be nice. In the car, I asked casual questions about Ethan, about the task force. She answered smoothly, the way spies probably do when they practice lying in mirrors. We pulled up outside a government building near Foggy Bottom. She leaned in to kiss me before getting out. I looked into her eyes, and for a split second, I almost said it. Everything. That I knew. That I'd seen it all. That I didn't recognize the woman beside me anymore. But I didn't. Because I still didn't know what she might do if she realized I wasn't clueless anymore. As she walked away, a man in a gray suit crossed the sidewalk and handed her a manila envelope. She didn't even flinch. Just took it, tucked it under her coat, and walked in. That afternoon, I found my brake lines had been cut. I don't know how I survived the turn down Wisconsin Avenue. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was God, or maybe whoever did it just wanted to send a message, not kill me, yet. I called Carla from a gas station, hands shaking. She cursed under her breath and told me to come to her office now. When I walked in, she was already packing her files. We've got a problem, she said. They know. I asked who. She didn't answer. Just handed me a phone with a burner number written on the back. If anyone contacts you on this number, it's either me or someone pretending to be me. Don't trust calls. Don't trust your wife. And if she asks you to meet her somewhere private, run. I stared at her. You think she would hurt me? I think she already has.
The burner phone sat on my nightstand like a loaded gun. I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway, every car slowing outside my house felt like the moment everything would come crashing down. I started locking the bedroom door at night, then pretending I forgot. I left my wedding ring on during the day, but took it off when I brushed my teeth. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror with it on anymore. Julia seemed to notice I was different. She didn't say anything outright, but she started being sweet again, gentle, the way she used to be when we were first dating. She'd call me at work just to say hi, send little texts with hearts. One night she cooked my favorite pasta, wore the same perfume she did the day we got engaged, and curled up beside me on the couch with her head on my chest. For a moment, I almost let myself believe that I was wrong, that Carla was wrong, that all of this was just some twisted misunderstanding, and my wife was simply tired, overworked, and slipping into the arms of a man who gave her attention at the wrong time. But then I'd remember the brake lines, the files, the whisper in that hotel room, just like the last one. I started keeping a journal, not because I wanted to process my feelings, but because I needed a record.
If something happened to me, if I suddenly disappeared, crashed, overdosed on pills I didn't take, or fell down stairs I never climbed, I wanted someone to know. To know that my wife, Julia Annette Davis, had lied, had cheated, and possibly much worse. Carla moved her office. She didn't tell me where. All I knew was that she was still digging, still watching, still protecting me in the shadows while I played a dangerous game of husband and spy. One night, around 2 a.m., the burner phone rang. Just once. No voicemail, no number. I texted Carla. You? No reply. The next morning, Julia asked me if I wanted to take a weekend trip. Just us. Reconnect, she said. She even smiled when she said it. Not her usual forced politician's wife smile. This one was soft. Too soft. Where? I asked. A cabin in the Shenandoah. Ethan and his wife own it. They said we could use it any time. I laughed. I couldn't help it. She looked confused. What? Nothing? I said. Just didn't expect you to say Ethan's cabin. She reached out and touched my hand. He's just a coworker, you know? I looked at her, straight into her eyes. Is he? She paused. Only for half a second. But that was all I needed. Her fingers tightened slightly on mine, then loosened. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, and changed the subject. That night, I didn't sleep again. The next day, Carla finally responded. A single sentence. He's not who you think he is. Neither is she. Attached was a file. It was a heavily redacted report, CIA origin. Internal note, subject JAD, Julia Annette Davis, clearance revoked after incident involving sensitive data transmission, monitoring reinstated under domestic intelligence protocol. The rest was blacked out, but there was one final line left in plain text. Asset reactivated via White House liaison EBH. EBH. Ethan Bernard Hayes. I felt sick. This wasn't an affair born out of lust. This was a reactivation. My wife had been in this game long before I ever knew her. She hadn't become part of something shady. She had returned to it. And I was just a convenient cover, a mask for the mask. Suddenly, our entire marriage felt like a fabrication. The fireworks on the 4th of July, the jacket, the engagement, the wedding. Was any of it real? Or had I been targeted? My phone buzzed again. It was Julia's voice. Hey babe, I was thinking we could leave for the cabin Friday night. Forecast says it might snow. I thought it'd be romantic. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I played the message again and again. There was something in her tone. Not fear, not love. Something I hadn't heard from her in a long time. Control. I called Carla. I think she's planning something. Carla's voice was sharp. Then don't go. I have to. She won't go alone, and if I don't go, she'll know I know.
We left for the cabin Friday at dusk. Julia wore her favorite scarf, the one I bought her in Vermont 2 years ago, and hummed quietly as she packed snacks and thermals into the back seat. She kissed me before we left, told me she was glad we were doing this. I forced a smile, nodded, and checked the trunk again. Not for luggage, for anything she might have planted. The drive out to Shenandoah took about 2.5 hours. It was cold, dark, and quiet. Too quiet. She didn't play music like she usually did, just scrolled through her phone, occasionally looking up to comment on the moonlight or how empty the road was. I tried not to show it, but my stomach was in knot. Carla had texted me as we left the house. Trackers in place. Keep her talking. Don't sleep. The cabin was beautiful, remote, surrounded by nothing but bare trees, frosty earth, and a stillness that felt unnatural. She said Ethan and his wife rarely used it, just when they needed a reset. I thought about that word for a while. Reset. Like erasing something. The inside was perfectly staged, firewood neatly stacked, wine chilling, a record player with soft jazz already queued up. The whole thing felt like a scene from a thriller. And maybe it was. Maybe that was the point. That night, after a dinner she insisted on cooking alone, she poured us both glasses of wine. She sat close, talked about the early days of our relationship, told stories we hadn't revisited in years. She laughed, she cried a little, she touched my hand and said she missed this, the way we used to be. And maybe, just maybe, she meant it. But I couldn't stop looking at the clock. Midnight passed, then 1. I pretended to drink, swapped glasses when she wasn't looking. Her wine had a faint bitterness, mine didn't. She stood, stretched, and said, "Let's go sit outside. The stars are incredible tonight." I hesitated. That was the moment. I knew it. The moment something would happen, a setup, an accident, maybe a missing person report waiting to be filed. But I nodded, followed her out. The air was cold enough to bite through bone. We stood in silence under the stars, and for a second, I thought maybe she really did just want to be close to me again. Then she spoke. "You know, I always wondered if you'd find out." I froze. She turned to me, calm, her face unreadable in the moonlight. "I mean, I thought maybe you were smarter than you let on. Or maybe Carla finally pushed too far. Either way, you found something, didn't you?" I didn't answer. She took a step forward. Not threatening, not nervous. "No, I'm not here to hurt you. I could have done that weeks ago. But I didn't. Because I still love you. In my own way." "In your own way," I said, voice shaking. "You call this love?" She stepped closer, her voice softer now. "What I'm part of, it's bigger than you. Bigger than us. And yes, Ethan was part of it, still is. But this isn't about sex or betrayal. It's about control, correction, survival." "What the hell are you talking about?" She looked up at the stars. "You think politics is about laws and votes? No, it's about influence. People like Ethan and me, we shape thought, belief, culture. We don't run campaigns. We run narratives. And sometimes people need nudging. You're brainwashing kids." She looked at me with pity. "We're protecting the future." I took a step back. "You're insane." She smiled gently. "Maybe, but I didn't want to lose you in the process." "Then why involve me at all?" She looked genuinely sad for the first time. "Because they said you were clean, off-grid, safe. The perfect background for someone like me. I didn't expect to fall in love." Tears stung my eyes, not from wind. "So this was all fake?" "No. The first year was real. The rest was blurred." I turned to go back inside, but stopped at the door. "What happens now?" She looked down. "They'll come for Carla. She's too close. She already knows too much." I turned sharply. "Then warn her." She shook her head. "It's out of my hands." "You're going to let them kill her?" "I can't save both of you." Something cracked inside me then, the last piece of trust, of hope, of the woman I married. I went inside, locked the door, sat on the couch, alone in the dark. Outside, I saw her silhouette still standing under the stars. Still. Waiting. Watching.
I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I sat on the couch, watching shadows crawl across the cabin walls, while Julia stayed outside, her silhouette barely visible under the stars. Around 4 a.m., I heard the door open gently. She walked past me without a word, went upstairs, and shut the door behind her. I waited 5 minutes before slipping out the back door into the trees. Carla had taught me how to spot trail cameras, motion sensors, tripwires. Simple field awareness tips she said might save my life one day. I used them all now. I circled the cabin in wide arcs, looking for signs of surveillance or backup. If Julie was telling the truth, if others were involved, I'd need proof. Hard proof. Because once I left this cabin, I wasn't coming back. I found tire tracks behind the shed. Fresh ones. Big. Heavy tread. SUV. Black government-issued tires. I snapped photos. Then I noticed something buried under the snow beside the deck. A small black transmitter. Blinking red. A tracker. Not meant for vehicles. Meant for people. She'd planted it on me at some point. Maybe in my coat. Maybe in the seat cushions. Maybe weeks ago. I crushed it under my boot and kept moving. I didn't know where Carla was or if she was still watching, but I prayed she was nearby. The sun broke over the trees just as I returned to the cabin. Julia was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea like nothing had happened. "You went out early," she said without looking up. "Needed air," I replied, voice flat. She nodded. "We should leave by 10. Storm's coming in." I didn't respond, just poured myself coffee and sat across from her. There was a long silence. Then she said, "They know you've seen the files." I didn't ask how. "They haven't decided yet what to do about it. Ethan thinks you can be useful. I told them you wouldn't be." I stared at her. "Why tell me this?" "Because I want you to understand. Once you're in this world, there's no out. Carla's not going to save you. No one is. Your best chance is silence. Go home. Pretend this never happened. I'll make sure they leave you alone." I leaned forward. "What happens to you?" She paused. "I stay in." I shook my head. "Why?" She looked at me like I was the naive one. "Because power isn't optional once you taste it." I left the table, packed my bag. She didn't stop me, just sat there, sipping tea like a woman whose husband wasn't about to walk away from a marriage, a home, and everything he thought he understood about love. Outside, the wind picked up. I didn't say goodbye. Back in D.C., Carla was waiting in my driveway. Her SUV was running, engine low, eyes scanning the street like she expected black vans to pull up any second. She said, "You made it out." "Barely. Get in." We drove without speaking for 10 minutes. Then she pulled into an abandoned parking structure and handed me a thick envelope. "Everything I have on Julia, Ethan, the program. It's not enough for court, but it's enough to make people disappear." I didn't ask how she got it. I didn't want to know. "I'm leaving D.C., Carla said. "They're on to me. I burned my safe house last night. After this, we don't speak again. Understand?" I nodded. She turned to me one last time. "If you want to survive this, stay boring. No press, no social media, no sudden moves. And whatever you do, don't try to expose them. They're not afraid of truth. They're afraid of attention." I took the envelope and left without shaking her hand. At home, the house felt like a museum. Every photo, every coffee mug, every memory, tainted. I sat at the kitchen table where Julia once planned our anniversary. I opened the envelope. Inside were documents, emails, photos, audio clips, a flash drive with encryption instructions, and a final note in Carla's handwriting. "If this goes public, make sure you're already gone." That night, Julia came home. She looked at me like nothing had changed, and I played along. We ate dinner, watched TV, went to bed. But I didn't close my eyes, because I was planning. Not revenge, not justice, but survival. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control.
For the next 2 weeks, I became the best version of myself. The version Julia expected. The quiet, supportive, mildly boring husband who asked nothing and smiled at everything. I cooked dinner, left sticky notes with hearts on her laptop, even surprised her with flowers once. She looked at me a little too long that day, as if trying to figure out whether I'd cracked or caved. I gave her nothing. No tells, no tension. I buried it all. Meanwhile, every night, after she fell asleep, I worked. The flash drive Carla gave me had layers of encryption. I followed her notes like a manual. She'd hidden access behind obscure file names, old photographs, dummy PDFs, and random strings of code that looked meaningless unless you understood what to look for. And inside it all was a blueprint. The Glass Bell program wasn't just psychological manipulation, it was information warfare. Targeted campaigns embedded into digital curriculums, mobile apps disguised as educational tools, fake social movements amplified by synthetic bots, and subtle language shifts seeded into news copy and AI summaries. Julia was listed as one of the asset integrators, meaning she wasn't just a participant. She placed people, decided who went where, who said what,
and who disappeared when the wrong questions were asked. Ethan's role was marked as interface handler. He coordinated public-facing assets, including minor influencers, anonymous whistleblowers, and even journalists who thought they were reporting leaks. It was a game of mirrors, and I was done playing it. I withdrew $10,000 in cash from 3 different banks. I bought a burner laptop, 3 new prepaid phones, and a license plate swap kit from a guy who didn't ask for my name. I told Julia I'd be traveling for a teaching conference. She kissed me, like she meant it. I pretended I didn't flinch, but I didn't leave town. Instead, I broke into a media consultant's office at 3 a.m. He was on Carla's list, a minor pawn. Someone who thought he was pushing stories for political gain, not realizing he was being used to destabilize public thought. I didn't steal anything. I just left a flash drive with the words "read, then decide" taped to his monitor. I did the same with a law professor, then a former FBI analyst who now ran a podcast. Each person got a copy of the same curated file Carla gave me. Not the whole thing, just enough to make them suspicious, to make them dig, to scatter attention in too many directions at once. Because I knew Julia was right about one thing. They don't fear truth. They fear noise. The night before I planned to vanish, Julia sat beside me on the bed and said something I didn't expect. "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer right away. She waited. Then I said, "I don't even know who you are." She didn't cry, didn't yell, just nodded. "That's fair." She stood, walked to the window, and whispered, "I didn't mean to choose this. But once you're in, you can't get out." "I could have told me," I said. She looked over her shoulder. "And then what? You'd have turned me in, left, or worse, joined me." I didn't say anything. She walked back to bed, laid down beside me, and whispered, "You should leave town tomorrow." My throat tightened. "Why?" But she didn't answer. She just closed her eyes. That night, I packed everything into a single duffel bag. I left my wedding ring on the nightstand, left my phone in the drawer, left a note that simply said, "I don't forgive you, but I understand." At 5:14 a.m., I walked out the door and didn't look back. By sunrise, I was on the highway, heading south under a different name. 3 hours later, I got a text on the burner phone. No name, no number, just 5 words. "You made the right choice." I deleted it immediately. Somewhere behind me, I imagined Julia waking up alone in our bed. Maybe she'd read the note. Maybe she'd report me missing. Maybe she'd cover for me. Or maybe she'd come looking. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in months, I was in motion. And that meant I was alive.
I stayed off the grid. Motels paid in cash, no Wi-Fi, no social media. I changed my look, cut my hair, grew a beard, wore secondhand clothes 2 sizes too big. Every time I saw a black SUV in the rearview mirror, my hands would tighten around the wheel. Every time someone held eye contact too long at a diner, I'd plan my exit. I didn't trust anyone. Not the old man who offered directions, not the gas station clerk who asked where I was headed, not the woman who reminded me of Julia for a split second before she smiled differently. I became a ghost. I listened to the news every morning on a crackling AM radio. There was never a story about Glassbell, never a scandal, never a leak. At least not directly. But here and there I heard echoes. A story about an anonymous data breach, a senator's aide disappearing without explanation, a podcast host dropping off the radar mid-season. Maybe Carla's seeds had taken root, or maybe the machine was just cleaning up faster than I could disrupt it. I kept the final flash drive in a hidden compartment under the spare tire. I only looked at it once more, just to remind myself that I hadn't gone crazy, that the betrayal had happened, that my marriage had been the camouflage for something far more dangerous. And then one night, about a month after I left, I saw her again. Not in person, on television. She was standing behind a White House spokesperson during a press briefing, half-shadowed, half-lit. She wore a navy blazer, hair neatly pinned, clipboard in hand. She didn't look toward the camera, but I knew it was her. The tilt of her jaw, the way she shifted her weight, calm, controlled. Still there. Still in it. Still dangerous. I watched in silence. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just stared. Because in that moment, I realized something. She hadn't let me go. She'd let me run. And if I was still breathing, it wasn't because she couldn't stop me. It was because she chose not to. Maybe she believed I wouldn't do anything with what I knew. Maybe she hoped the distance would break me. Or maybe, in her own twisted way, she still loved me enough to grant me one small mercy. Escape. But I knew better than to confuse mercy with safety. A few days later, I got a package at the motel front desk. No return address. Inside was a small, unmarked envelope. No note. Just a single photograph. Me. Taken from behind. Sitting in the motel diner 3 nights earlier. I didn't stay to check out. I was gone before the sun came up. That was 6 months ago. Now I move every few weeks. Never stay too long, never tell the same story twice. And every now and then, when I turn on the news or pass a political ad, I see something that makes me wonder. Is this her? Is this their doing? Is the narrative shifting again? I don't pretend to understand all of it. I just know this. I married a woman who smiled like freedom and spoke like truth. And behind that smile was a network of control, silence, and manipulation. People think adultery is the ultimate betrayal. But adultery, that was the soft part. The real betrayal was letting me love her while she used me as her cover. And I'll never forgive her for that.